Hi, I'm Carolyn, and with the ppl.Kickstarter, I help startups, scale-ups, and SMEs in tech to manage people well, to craft company culture intentionally, and to maximize impact with compelling communications along both. Because with the power of these three, you pull your team together long-term and are able to build a long-lasting, successful company. So in today's episode, we will hear from Clarissa Convertino from Lumiphase.
That's correct.
And I'm glad you're here because your story is quite interesting. We met on a virtual call when I was there as a guest speaker on a people session, and you were like standing out as kind of a role model with the ESA Business Incubation Center. So I was intrigued right away to learn more. And I'm glad you're here to share with our viewers what your story and your journey to your culture was. So Lumiphase is, and I really tried to research that. It's a unique combination of a chemical compound and silicone, which is a typical transmitter. And it's connecting chips through light.
Yes, that's correct. Absolutely.
So what exactly is the magic you're doing?
Yes. So first of all, let me tell you how happy I am to be here and being able to share my story with you. So about Lumiphase, that's a challenge with deep tech companies, right? Because we don't sell a product to an end user. We have a very complicated business model. We sell products to other companies, or what is called B2B, and we do very advanced technology development, which is usually hard to explain to my parents and grandparents. So with the years, I managed to probably prepare a couple of sentences that should do the job, but let's see. Lumiphase, the secret sauce of Lumiphase lies in a unique material, a photonic material, which is called barium titanate, BTO for friends. And it's basically a material that has unique so-called electro-optical properties. In a nutshell, we can transform electrical signals from computers into light, so optical signals, in a very efficient way. Translated into your daily life, it means you're going to have a much faster, much more efficient, and much more reliable data transmission that goes from the data center all the way to your place. And this is done essentially thanks to this very special material that we are developing at Lumiphase.
Wow, it really blew my mind. I was going to Wikipedia and reading about it. I'm like, wow. And then it said something like you can control light, you can manipulate light. Yes. And I was like, wow, it sounds a bit like Star Wars singing to me, lightsabers and stuff. But I'm really impressed. I'm not trying to talk it down with Star Wars.
I believe you.
I really am. And it's always important to understand what the business does when we start talking about culture, because both need to go together and need to make sense together. So let's talk about the culture journey of Lumiphase. You were there from the start.
Yes, that's
right?
Correct. Exactly. I was I label myself as employee number one. I am the employee number one, and I'm very proud of that. And the pride of it's actually something we should extensively talk about. I would say today.
Please.
The company was founded by 4 researchers from the IBM Research Zurich lab that basically got together after many years of working in this field, and they decided to try to do something with this work, with this research work, try to bring this product on the market finally. And so basically I knew them since already a few months, thanks to my PhD work. And when I got offered the opportunity to join them from the very beginning, I was absolutely excited. Honestly, I was a bit new to the field. I come from a slightly different field from the electronics world, if you want. But I had such a excitement for the idea, and also I knew the founders quite well at that point to have a really deep admiral and respect for them, that for me it was like a blind yes. I absolutely had to do that. And then many other people started joining not so long after that. But what I find really unique, if you want, is how every single person that joined since then, it's motivated in this journey as much, sometimes even more, than the founder themselves.
Wow.
And this is something that I think is not so easy to achieve in such a setting.
Absolutely. So there are like 3 questions jumping to my mind already. So you said we should dive into how it feels to be employee number 1. So I'm really, really excited to hear more about that, because you're like that kind of, magic hire that can make or break it, basically. So tell us about it, employee number 1.
I want to limit the bragging here to the minimum necessary, but I will do my best.
Spill the tea.
No, honestly, I think I reflected a lot in these years, also talking to other startups on what is the definition of a founder, what is actually a founder. And it's if you think about it, it's not any legal entity. It doesn't say on any of your documents. You can be a CEO, you can be on the board, you can be whatever, but you don't have the label of a founder. Right. So the founder, it's something that every startup probably comes up with their definition of. And in my opinion, it's really that team that sits down around the idea and decides to make the step. I was obviously not part of that, and I totally acknowledge that, although sometimes I make jokes about the fact that I'm the 5th founder of Lumiphase, but no, I'm not, honestly. I joined the company as first employee, yes. I joined with a lot of motivation and excitement, and every day I drive my work and myself into it like with passion. Yeah. I strongly believe in the idea. I strongly believe in the success of the company, and that's it, basically. I don't really feel any, resentment with respect to the fact that I'm not considered officially a founder, because I feel part of a journey, and that's enough for me at this phase. I think this is also something where the company culture can play a big role, because if you set it up correctly in a way that people feel engaged from the very beginning, and a very important part here is feeling part of the decision process. Mm-hmm. Anything that gets decided, if it's not top down, if it's slowly absorbed by the people, and it's perceived as something that, it's collective, it belongs to everyone, I think it can be a good recipe for long-term, engagement of the employees, also from the first to the very last one. Yeah,
absolutely, because people do not need to be convinced that it's a good idea.
Exactly.
Right? Because what I hear you say is that they are involved in a decision-making means that they have the information, they can think about it, they can reflect on it, they can maybe share concerns. Yes. Is there kind of a process that exists, or has it happened naturally because the founders were aware of the fact that they wanted this co-creation, co-decision making, or do they have like a strict, process of steps where they say we need to make a decision, so we do this?
It's a very good question. And to be honest, I when I was thinking of what we would be talking today, I thought that would be the last secret sauce I would share in this podcast. But I think it's a very good point. So I think the company culture should be there from the beginning, right? Mm-hmm. It's not something you can come up with totally from scratch, and it needs to reflect the essence and the values of the founders, or at least of the team that is there from the beginning. Therefore, I think this attitude that we have of this tendency of sharing and involving every employee in the decision process, it's something that somehow the intention was there in the founders already. But I think, honestly, it can be partially engineered a bit in your startup with the right processes, in a sense. So you probably need a good balance of both. You need a good intention, of course, and you need some way to implement it correctly. For instance, we all these decisions, all these, let's say, processes were implemented not from the beginning, because of course you need time to figure out what's right for you. But at some point we started having, for instance, weekly meetings, and we still have that, where everybody from the company, be it like a all hand meeting, is there every week or every 2 weeks, we call it strategy meeting, and we discuss about different topics. It goes from the financial situation of the company, the strategic decisions in terms of investments, where we want to go with our product roadmap, and we discuss this with everyone, from the administrative assistant to the business developer, the engineers, anyone that works for Lumiphase. And I found this very interesting, that one of our co-founders, he was a bit concerned at some point that maybe, yes, we can say that on that Friday, but what if next Friday then this changes, we change our mind, and what do we do then? Do we tell everyone, hey, we don't go with that investor, we go with the other one because we change our mind? So should we share things when they are finally decided and set in stone, or should we involve people throughout the process? And the decision was the second one, because it's okay to say, hey, last week we told you that, but in the end we decided it was better to do something else. People feel part of it, and if they are reasonable and if they understand what's behind, they can accept also pivoting moments, which are actually quite crucial in a startup. So I heard once of a company that basically never have any meeting where everybody from the company is in there. Personally, I think that's wrong. I think you need to have a moment where everybody feels part of that journey, and where you share with full transparency what is going on in that company.
Actually, it's awesome that you're sharing this, because I hear that from so many founders that they say, what if we share all that and then we change our minds? I mean, it's not like you're going from A to B to C just because you can, right? But there's good reason for it. And I always also stand on what you're saying on your side, because I think when you have good reason for it and you are able to explain it to people, then they can actually process it, understand it, and buy into the happenings, let's say it that way, because the decision making is something else.
Yes, absolutely.
And on the other hand, when you just do things and nobody really knows about it, and I've seen it so many times, is that then people say, well, they do this thing today and they do another tomorrow, and I don't know what will happen to me. My job, is it at risk? Whatever. I'm out tomorrow, whatever. And then it really hurts their loyalty. Loyalty is a bit of a much discussed term as well, but it takes away credibility as well, right?
Yes,
so
absolutely.
I love it that you see the positive effects of it. Yes. And lots of founders then also tell me, like, I'm not that brave, of sharing all that because I don't know what will happen. So is there any way of how the founder team at Lumiphase does it?
Good question. I would say the essence of how we do it, it's with transparency and honesty.
Yeah.
And also it helps if you start this process as early as possible, because if you decide today, after 3 years, you had your startup, to finally open up and, go through all the previous history, might be challenging. But I have the feeling if it's done bit by bit, and if it's also done through the less official situations, you don't have to wait for the strategy meeting on Friday of Lumiphase to make an announcement. It should never be perceived actually as an announcement, unless, of course, there can be some exceptions where you really could not talk about it by contract or whatever. But anything else, I usually hear things during coffee breaks or at lunch, because we are open. We talk about what is going on, and this really helps. And this should not be mixed up with a democracy, because of course there is a hierarchy in a startup and in any company. Of course there are certain people that have to make decisions at the end, and they are liable for those, right? Like by law. So it's not about deciding together. It's just feeling part of the decision process. And as you correctly said, having a mean to accept those decisions in a easier way once they come top down.
Awesome. So you have been with Lumiphase for over 3 years now.
Yes.
It's a long journey. And you started in R&D.
Yes.
And then you kind of changed into the people
Many
sphere,
things.
many things. Oh, tell me about it. Because
Yes.
that's actually very true for startups as well.
It
You start
is.
with one role and then you kind of do all the things.
Yeah, the wearing different hats, it's a thing for sure. And it's a need on one hand, but it's also one of the reasons why I decided to join a startup.
Yeah.
Because when I finished my studies, at some point I was oriented towards an academic career. So I thought maybe I will just stay in research. But I really didn't know what I wanted to be as a grown up. And spoiler, I don't know yet. Yes, so I decided to join this journey, and immediately I had the option of wearing different hats, like partially from the contract I will set it up, but also from the less formal agreements. I immediately mentioned that I was interested in exploring all the, for example, communication related activities of the company. At that time, anyway, there was nobody else that could do that better than me, I would say. So I set up the social media pages. It's something anyway I like to do in my private life, so why not? And that was done in parallel with being in the lab and manufacturing the chips with my hands, which is what I was doing mostly in the first months. So I was developing the process to fabricate these chips, and I was executing the process myself, because of course that's a big part of it. At the same time, I was exploring these more communication roles, so taking care of the writing the posts and a bit like the outer relations with the people that were around Lumiphase. And then we needed to hire more people, right? So how do we do that? I volunteered in a sense to help the founders setting up a hiring process. I have absolutely zero background there, so we went through many mistakes for sure. But we tried to do it, with an engineering approach, if you want. So we sat down and we wrote down a step to recruit people, step 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we started having posting jobs. We posted most of our jobs on December 2020, I think. We posted 7 jobs on LinkedIn on the 24th of December. And then I closed my laptop, I went on holidays, and then we came back in January. I opened it, we had more than 1,000 CVs to reviews. And we were like, okay, how do we do that now? We had absolutely no hiring tool, nothing. So me and one of the founders, we sat down and we started building a process to handle these CVs. And so, that's how you learn how to do things. For the first time, you need to find a solution and you do it. And that's how it worked for the first 2 years, roughly, where I was really sharing. I would say I was maybe 50% recruiting and 50% being an engineer, which was not easy.
I can imagine. Obviously, though, you did something very right with these job ads because 1,000 divided by 7, wow. I mean, that's
it was a lot. Yes. And now we are roughly 60 people at Lumiphase. So definitely we have been hiring a lot.
Awesome. How did you work your way through the 1,000 applications? How did you do that?
Yes.
Did it take forever?
As I said, we approached the problem with an engineering method. So we had a platform, like a bit of a project management tool, and we kind of adapted that to handle CVs. So we essentially built a form that we sent to everybody who applied up to then. We should have done that earlier. So that people can upload their CV, but also fill in some basic information, like, and answer some pre-screening questions. And then this way we had like the data, this massive data was more structured, and we could just filter based on certain criteria. I don't know, the language, the technical skills, and any other. So that helped, but it's something we had to do kind of in emergency because we needed to give an answer to all these people, right?
You didn't want to lose them, that they go work somewhere else. Basically, what you did is you reverse engineered an applicant tracking system, because that's what these things do.
Something like that. Because I tried to look into it, but they were too expensive, and I didn't have time to understand which one is the best. So we just took whatever was available.
Awesome. Basically, you could use Notion as well for a tracking with the board. You know, with which stage is which candidate in at the moment, but
Exactly.
love the form with the pre-screening. You kind of went there. Great. Looking back, what would you do differently? Would you not trade the experience for anything, or would you think like, maybe I should have researched a bit more before we posted the job ads? Or how do you think about it now?
Yeah, so maybe we could have set that up earlier, but I'm a big fan of not overthinking mistakes, because mistakes are useful.
Yes, you learn more from mistakes. Yes.
And so, yeah, honestly, you don't have to wait that you have a perfect. We really needed to get those job ads out, and we could not wait any longer. Also, we really wanted to make usage of the Christmas time, where maybe some people are taking a break from their job to look for something. So the timing sometimes is just important. It's like with your product. Sometimes you have to go. You don't have. You cannot always wait for the beta version to be so perfect. And so honestly, I would say it's better to do something than waiting too long and then lose the train.
Yeah. And actually, it's a good thing that you then also could apply your engineering approach, because it sort of was more naturally for you, right?
It comes together in the end, yes, exactly.
And it's matching your way of doing things and your culture again.
Exactly.
So. And now, when we look at the culture from how it was at the beginning and then how it grew and with intention already and what it is now, can you share a bit of that journey?
Yes, so as I said, the good DNA was there already from the founders and the early joiners. But in the first 8 to 12 months, probably, we really didn't have much time to think about the details of the company. And maybe that's a mistake. Company culture is not the detail and should never be considered as such. But the needs at that time were, we need to get started. So it was actually, to my experience, still one of the most intense crunch phase that I had so far. And then we woke up in March or April 2021 and we looked at each other and we were like all drained from this intensive effort. And we decided, okay, we need to sit down, think retrospectively to what we did wrong so far, what we did well so far, and we can take it from here. So that was the first Lumiphase workshop we organized. It was also the first time where the company came together on site, because we should not forget that we were founded during COVID.
Right.
Also, we have to work in different locations just by design of how we operate. So it was not always easy to come together on site. We organized this workshop where basically everyone, we were roughly 11, 12 people, where everyone could just write down their thoughts on sticky notes in terms of anything that bothered them up to that point. So technically, operations, HR, hiring, onboarding, it could have been really anything, food availability at the office and social events. We clustered all the inputs, we discussed about it, we built like some work groups, and then we took like concrete steps towards these concerns or issues. So we from that workshop that we organized in 2021, one of the biggest outcome was the decision that we need a focused effort on company culture. That's how we go back to the topic of today. So what we did, we decided to volunteer. So anyone from the company could join at that phase, and we just started meeting every week regularly to discuss culture-related topics of the company. And of course, the first phase was fully focused on getting a document, something that it's set in stone, if you want. It should be, because culture should not change too often. And where we could say, okay, we need to build our identity. The identity is already there in a sense. We just need to make sure we can explain it to others, right? So we put it black on white on a piece of paper. And from there, we start living our values. This is extremely important, I think. As I said, the company culture is not something that you do on the side. We took, all of us, roughly 1 hour per week, every week since then, to discuss topics around company culture. As an example, we needed to build an employee stock option plan, what's called ESOP. It was the idea that we would have one was, of course, there from the beginning, but how we do it, how much percentage everybody gets, do we do that on a yearly basis, 4-year plan and stuff like that? How do we do that? So normally this is something that it's decided in the management. We discussed about it. Everybody did their research, how other startups are doing. We brought the data on the table. And in the end, we took a decision that was the most suitable for us. Similarly, for the salary transparency, how do we manage, how do we deal with that? There are some companies that have an Excel file with all the salaries in there, some other where this is considered a taboo. And it's also a cultural factor. So again, there we started with an idea, we sat down, we looked at data, and we came up with a shared decision of how we want to do it at Lumiphase. And that's not the right way necessary, right? It's just the way that works for us because everybody accepts it.
Yeah, and I think it's super important to know what can I do with my target group in a sense. Are they willing to participate? Are they able to process this information? Are they able to research this information? And now with the engineering background, working through data, I think everybody's very close to that. Also finding the right kind of information. Especially like looking at an ESOP plan, for example. That's a very complex thing to do. Yes. Ooh, and taxes and legal.
I wasn't part of that.
You're like, oh, no, thank you. Yeah, it's a huge undertaking. So you had then, like you said, action groups or groups looking into these topics. I really love that approach because not everybody needs to do everything. But by delegating it to a certain group of people and the others feel they're represented.
Yes.
Did they all volunteer? That's what you said.
Yes. So from the workshop, we had something like 3 or 4 topics. I don't know. One was how we handle data at Lumiphase. There are some topics that most likely don't need to be discussed forever. It's like there is a problem. We work on it. Probably in 2-3 months, we came up with a better data platform and then we closed the work group. So we had some of these work groups, again, on a volunteer basis that were formed from the workshop. And we kept doing that every year. So even this year, we had a similar approach. But the company culture team, this is also something that came from the workshop, but this is more something that stayed up to today. So. And there it's where we started discussing more of these topics that might not necessarily be closed in a session or so. It was voluntarily basis. Maybe that's the challenge. I can imagine we were lucky. We had a consistent group of people that were motivated and everybody else was supporting it, simply did not feel like playing an active role in that. And that's understandable. People could contribute, but not necessarily sitting there. And some people simply did not have the bandwidth at that time. So it's just the way it is. I can imagine that in not all startups, there can be necessarily this alignment of planets where you have motivated employee to take the time and sit down. But what I find important is that the founders or the management has that as a very important point in their agenda. If it doesn't start from them, it might as well not start, I think. One of the founders was an active member of the culture team, but the other ones would still join the discussions from time to time. If you are not setting the example, the other people are not going to do it by themselves. That's clear.
Absolutely. And then even if it starts, it will fizzle out. So it will not stick.
Exactly.
So they are still very supportive of all the activities today.
Yes, absolutely. Cool. They are I would say the prime supporters of the cultural activities, and also in terms of being a role model, all of them are actively engaged in technical work still. Some of them are really hands-on in the lab, and they are actively helping the other employees. So it's really important to have this, to not to have any firewall, I would say, between management and employees. It should be perceived as one thing, because we are all striving for the success of Lumiphase.
Absolutely. You said earlier that in November 21 there was this kind of moment of awareness that you wanted to tackle the topic more actively. Did something happen that triggered that decision, or was it simply because, it has been sitting there for so long and we wanted to do it for so long and now we're going to do it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it was really awakening from this crisis time that we had in terms of like excessive workload and really crunch time that made us feeling, okay, we need to do something about it. And then a lot of questions started coming up, like what the topics I mentioned, I don't know, the ESOP, or how do we treat overtime and stuff like that. We didn't really know which was the correct answer. And the correct answer is, there is no correct answer to these questions. There is one that works best for your company, and we did not know exactly who Lumiphase is at that point. So we felt this need of clarifying the identity of the company. So it's really not something like an aha moment, that's something that happens from one morning to the other, but I have the feeling it's a general slow feeling that spreads about, people started asking questions and we needed to give answers. And those answers were part of the culture team process, I would say.
I love it. It's really a journey that evolved over time. And after all the hard work, you came to realize that, hey, something's growing here. We need to also take this other dimension into consideration. So today your role is staff engineer. I like the term. What are your challenges today? You already explained like the engineering approach, and it's part of your culture. So it's a perfect symbol of your culture to call it staff engineer. I love that. What is your role today, and what are your challenges today? What are you working on in regards of people and culture?
Yes, so I would say, so we actually structured all the roles with the engineer title somewhere, because we are mostly engineers. We have maybe 3 employees which are not engineers still. So we are a heavily tech company still. Challenges, I would say for us, considering that we went from being 10 employees at the end of the first year, 20 at the end of the second year, and now at 3.5, we are like more than 60. This is the challenge. This is a complete different world compared to all the, let's say the company culture document. It's still there, and I have to look at it every day. But like living these values with such a diversity of backgrounds, people, situations, and also difficult times for the company, which are of course occurring from time to time. It's a challenge that, like, so the scalability of the company culture, it's the main point.
Scaling from, you were number 5 to 60 plus. 5 to 60. Yes, it's a very different thing. Yes. And you know that there are 2 ways to say it. One is everything breaks in 3 and 10. You know that one?
Yes.
Or everything when you triple.
Yes.
You land at more or less the same numbers when you triple from 3, 9, and so forth. So I guess let me calculate it real quick. You're in the middle of something. You're between 30 and 100. Yes. But it's that kind of phase where you need structures, you need different routes of communication, maybe.
Yes.
More of them. You need different kind of documentation, all these kind of things. And social events are getting bigger.
It's all about that. Social events, we had them from at least the post-COVID beginning. And this is an extremely important part of for a startup, and also for teams in bigger companies. I absolutely encourage everyone to do. It's never too much. We have actually implemented something really cool social event wise. We have basically every week we announce 1 or 2 co-CEOs for that week, where CEO stands for Chief Entertainment Officer, And it's basically everybody from the company every week gets to organize something for the rest of the team.
Wow.
So like if you are Italian, you bring some specialties from your country, or if you are you want to, I don't know, organize some sport activities, and this can be done during the lunch break or in the evening or
I love it.
So this is absolutely like a pro tip. I'm really a big fan of it since it was suggested and implemented. It's working really well because it gives a bit of, social aspect every week, and people can step in and out, and it's really it's really nice.
It also shares the work of organizing these events, because if you do all these events as one person or team, it can really get a lot. And at the same time, by sharing it with everybody, I just had the thought, is like everybody in that moment shares something from them. So all the others from the team get to see this aspect of the person. It's like they're getting to know each other simply based on the activity they plan for.
Absolutely. That's actually this type of social event idea that was proposed. It's something that came in the scaling phase already. Because the first 2 years, I was organizing events pretty much with the help of my wonderful colleagues. But I must say it was heavy on one or 2 or 3 people maximum. Then we also tried to have a social events team, which we still have. So a few people in the company that are officially in charge for the Christmas dinner, the company retreat, and so on and so forth. But like we realized it was getting tougher and tougher to have like these big, even just booking a restaurant is complicated, right? So with this co-CEO idea, everybody gets to do something every week, and then maybe it's like a smaller amount of people because not everybody joins every week. And yes, that's a very important aspect, that people can be known for who they are, where they come from. They can share a part of themselves. That's really cool. Yeah,
and it's up to them what they share. It's not like you have in these group activities and then you throw something at somebody and they catch it and then they have to say something. And so often people don't want to, or they have to, and then it's this kind of forced activity.
No, that never works.
I really like that. It's a fabulous idea.
Yes, it is. Not my idea, by the way, but I
we give credit to whoever was bringing up that idea. Yes. Really good idea.
Yeah. So essentially, the main topics that are, we also see how differently the topic are emerging in this workshop. The 20, 21, 22, 23. It's very different, and it's reflecting how. Where do we stand as a company, of course. So the last topics this year were mostly about documentation, of course, like how do we communicate. We have like our Teams channel are exploding right now, of course, because there is so much history and comments. People don't know where they have to copy paste a file when they want to add some documentation. These type of things, these are, I would say, the phase B of our startup that concerns with the high numbers of employees that we have. Yeah,
very natural process or a phase to go through. So before we wrap this up, what is your number one tip, looking back at all you've gone through the past 3.5 years, all the roles, all the learnings? What is your number one tip for founder teams, small teams, the first hires, to build a company culture that really resonates and sticks with the company in such way, like you did, successfully motivating people beyond, the founder phase? Let me put it that way.
I will try to wrap it up in a sentence, although there is many bullet points I see in my head. But essentially, I would suggest not to try to build the right culture. There is no right culture. It's important that the founders, the team that is there from the beginning, look at themselves and see who they are, what are the main common points, and try to build from that. So the knowledge between the people at the beginning, it's actually crucial. I'm aware that the 4 founders of Lumiphase, they spent hours before founding the company to simply going through some standard questions to get to know each other even better than they already did. So this is, I think, an essential part. And sometimes startups are founded from people that maybe barely know each other. that's okay. It's important to go through that process intensively. There is no right and wrong culture. The culture should be reflecting who you are. And people will join if they like it, right? The culture should work as an attracting point for the employees and the people that are a good fit for that.
Yeah.
As I said, there is no wrong and right. And what is, I think, very important is that the founders communicate that as an important aspect, as equal as knowing what your product will be or when it will be on the market. If the founders don't give attention and don't give the time every week to discuss about these topics, it's not going to happen at any point. And the earlier you start, the better. If we could have done something differently, maybe we would have probably started a few months earlier even. But as I said, mistakes are there for a reason. So
right.
It's also okay that it went like that.
Yeah. And you did create something wonderful out of it.
It worked somehow.
It worked out.
So far.
You engineered your way through it very successfully so far. So that was a very nice wrap up from your side with a very useful tip for everyone.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for spending the time with me, sharing all the secrets, even those you didn't want to share.
I have many more.
Okay, we need to have like a second
up.
episode at some point. Awesome. All right. And if you want to learn more about what Lumiphase does, what Clarissa does, how to get in touch with her, or what I do with the People Kickstarter and what I'm doing with 42, we put links to our profiles down here, also our company links. Get in touch, reach out, send questions. We're happy to get to know you. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you like it, you share it with someone who might benefit from it too. And of course, subscribe to the channel to not miss any future episodes coming out. So thank you so much for your time with the People Kickstarter today. We hope to see you again next time, and take care. Bye-bye.